So today I have the pleasure to discuss with Steve Blank. So hello Steve, thanks for speaking with us today.
Hello.
So Steve Blank is a well-known serial entrepreneur. He is the author of the best-selling book, The Fourth Step to the Epiphany. And Steve is also a teacher in entrepreneurship in 3 major US universities. And he writes a blog about customer development, what we will talk probably about today. A methodology that Steve developed to optimize startup changes to get scalability and to get success. So my first question for today is about advices to future entrepreneurs. What would be your advices to future entrepreneurs that are willing to launch their business?
Well, number one is to understand that it's an adventure, not a job, and that entrepreneurship is a passion and a calling and not a 9-to-5 activity. The problem nowadays is entrepreneurship has become trendy and fashionable, and that actually might be its biggest mistake for people who think they want to be entrepreneurs because it's a fad, like clothing. There isn't a choice between taking a job in a large company or joining a startup. If you're faced with that choice and trying to sort out between the two, then you've already decided you want to work for the large company. And being an entrepreneur really is an irrational desire. And if you don't have that irrational desire to bring a vision to fruition or to join someone else's quest for bringing their vision to fruition, go work in a large company for a while. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. So I guess that would be my first piece of advice. But if you do it and you love it, it's pretty addictive. You notice very few entrepreneurs ever go back to working to large companies again. They're ruined for life. The second, though, is, and the second piece of advice is a mistake I made for at least the first 15 of my 20 years of career as an entrepreneur, is confusing my vision and passion for facts. Turns out on day one, a startup is nothing more than a faith-based adventure. There are no facts. It's all about faith. The problem is confusing that faith with the ability to execute on just your vision. The biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make on day one or there are just actually two. One is believing your vision actually makes you understand what customers actually need and want. Mm-hmm. And therefore, if you believe you know, therefore, oh, I don't need to go out and spend time talking to them. Not only do I know, it leads to the second major failure is, so let's start coding and build the entire product because I know what they want, because I believe, and maybe I asked my roommate or my dorm mate or a couple of co-founders and they agree, so let's go develop the entire product. Those two things, I know what the customer wants and I know what features they want, kind of leads to a downfall of just wasted code, time, and energy. So that leads to the mantra I've kind of come up with, which is the basis of the entire customer development philosophy, which says there are no facts inside the building, so get the hell outside.
So going outside, meeting the users, meeting the customers, talk with them to really understand what are their needs, what they try to fulfill. That's your advice.
So that used to be my advice. My advice after a decade is a little more sophisticated. Your job getting out of the building is trying to understand what really makes up a startup. Mm-hmm. And what my definition of a startup is a temporary organization, be designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. And you know, while most of the sentence is parsable, the last part, business model, is kind of confusing because if you used to get 3 professors in a room, mm-hmm. you'd get 10 definitions of what a business model is.
Right.
It turns out in the last year or two, we've kind of solved that problem. There's a book every entrepreneur ought to have, besides my 4 Steps to the Epiphany, is Alexander Osterwalder's Business Model Generation. Osterwalder has basically defined a business model with 9 boxes. He says, listen, there are 9 pieces of any company. what's the value proposition? Who's the customer? What's the revenue model? What's the channel? How do you reach these customers? What are the partners you need, the activities and resources and costs? And once you know all 9 of those, you know what your company is all about. And so now all of a sudden we have the pieces that were missing for the last 40 years in startups. We now could say, listen, what a startup is about is searching for the answers to those 9 boxes. And in the early days, only 2 or 3 of those are critical. What are we building and for who? And how will we make money? And the process to do that search is called customer development. The way to keep score of what we're searching for is the business model canvas out of the Osterwalder work. And the combination of the two are incredibly powerful. They now focus young entrepreneurs on what is it we should be doing, when should we be doing it, and how should we be doing it. And it's very different than the traditional, let's write a business plan and then go execute the revenue model, which is probably the best creative writing exercise any entrepreneur is ever going to do in their career.